Greetings, salutations, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Ekard here with my partner in crime.
Hey guys, what's up? It's OTK.
Hopefully, you guys are having an amazing day. X-Men 97 has officially finished, well, last week. We released a 9-hour long video which just encompasses all the episodes and reactions into one like super long super cut. For those of you who have been showing a lot of support, we also did release the post-credit reaction because we missed it initially.
Yeah.
So shout outs to everybody in the comment section that did alert us that on the episode 10 reaction. But now there's a nice long 9-hour video with all the cooking sessions in one. But today we're here for something very different. We did our recent rewatch of the last episode on Friday when we had a Twitch stream. And then shout out to everybody that joined us for that Twitch stream. But today we're going to officially encompass it all, all of our thoughts.
Yeah, I figured it was a good idea just, taking a step back from the show. It's been a week now. Technically a little less since we did rewatch episode 10 on Friday, but a week to, gather our thoughts and whatnot. And since I did my full rewatch a week prior, I was able to take notes, which I kind of skimmed through in our episode 10 reaction and cook session. But I figured it's a good time since I spoke a lot about my feelings and stuff. And, I think it would be really nice to hear your final thoughts on the whole series thus far, how you're feeling about it, and then break down deeper into my notes and themes just after being able to absorb the whole series and see what other people are feeling and how other people are talking about the series as well, and how that has informed my thought process and my perspective on the show after it's ended.
Yeah. I guess where would you like to begin? Because I mean, there's
with
many.
with
There's many.
you
Oh, just
yeah,
you just
just
want me to start
yeah,
shooting it
just
off? Okay.
it doesn't necessarily, I don't think we need to do episode by episode since it is a review. Well, I think as we talk naturally, we'll like, oh, episode 1 this, episode 2 that. My notes are here to help, and I broke it down with each episode. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts because like I said, I've talked so much how I feel about this stuff. I'm very intrigued and interested on your perspective and how you feel being someone who knows X-Men, who's consumed a little bit of it, but obviously, like we've mentioned, not to the scale that I have.
Yeah.
But someone who is kind of watching this show with new eyes in a
Yeah.
way. And just your perspective on it and how you feel about entering this realm of comic book animation and media.
Yeah. So to start things off with, right? When we first jumped into X-Men 97, one of the especially because this was one of the first series in a very, very, very long time that I watched from like the American comic book space. Even with Invincible, which I haven't finished or anything like that. Just seeing the various differences, right, between the medium of what I've been consuming, mainly with Japanese anime, even Korean anime, even Chinese, basically a lot of Asian animation versus the American market, the Western market. So coming into X-Men 97 after having like years off from consuming anything X-Men related, at least in the animation sphere. And I mean, some of the live action movies, like I could pinpoint some of them, but I couldn't like remember all of them and whatnot. This was honestly, like I said it during our reactions, but this was honestly some of the best storytelling that I've seen in recent memory. Especially like I'm just not comparing that to like Western animated features, but I'm talking about even anime, and just like in general. And the one cool thing that I always will give, like, I guess you say props to, is that because there are so many different writers for X-Men, so many different stories that have been told throughout its entire history, that it feels like much more of a bigger thing. And then watching your reactions, especially when you can just pinpoint, like, oh my God, they might be going in this direction. Oh my God, they might be taking the character arc in this direction. And it's just like something like that where you can pull from multiple different source materials to make something brand new can make you anticipate a lot of these adaptations a lot more than you can say for anime, light novels, and in that spirit, because usually it's one to one when it comes to anime and this adaptations from light novels and manga. Usually there is no other mediums you can pull from. Like there's just one source material, and that's about it. So it's either there, it's in I know in anime community, people will go to bat like when something is not adapted, one to one. They're gonna, they're gonna cry, they're gonna bitch and moan about how, oh my god, you left this out, oh my god, this is filler and stuff like that. And that's pretty much the harsh reality of that sphere when it comes to animation. Where you have with X-Men 97, one thing I really did love is learning about, okay, what point, like which comic is this pulling from? There was multiple different examples that you could pull from, even going back and like watching some clips of the original 5 season run, I mean, where that was a lot, that's a lot to pull from. There's so much depth in history that we have with X-Men, and just hearing theories. That's, I think, one of my favorite things as well, which you can only really do in anime when you're caught up to the manga, is talk about theories, right? And theorize, that's not probably a correct word, but you can
theorize is
okay,
the right word.
Okay, okay, so yeah, and you can have these constant like weekly thoughts about what are these people possibly going to do, how are they going to portray these characters, and the overarching thing, that's something that I truly did like about the first season of X-Men. Now we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into the specific characters that we got this season, because there's some characters I believe that are complete hits, and a lot of other characters that I believe were some misses, and that's because of the allocated time towards them. And I know one thing that we're definitely going to talk about, I'm not, maybe not in this particular review, but I know we would probably do a few more videos, like Storm, right? Now I saw IGN's, I tweeted and I tagged you in the tweet. Those of you, I can follow us on Twitter, description bar down below. Selfless plug. But yeah, IGN released their score of like giving the first season a 9 overall, right? But it was the specific episodes that they gave certain scores to that I was not feeling.
Yep.
Episode Same. 4 and 6, they both got a score of 7. And those were the two life death episodes, mainly the ones that featured Storm, of course, and the ones that also featured Jubilee, and then the birds, as I've seen some people on Twitter have been saying, yeah, the birds.
God, I can't even be, I'm not even upset about it because they are bird people.
Like, like when I saw one Twitter like user, they're just like, yeah, people didn't watch it because it's the fucking birds, bro. I'm just like, damn, that's crazy. I'll say it just like that. So for verbatim,
oh my God.
that's the language other people were using for it, right? But overall, I like, even with my like limited knowledge of X-Men, right? Just knowing how broken Storm is as a character and some of the situations she was placed into, okay, I understand, the powers being taken away. We already talked at length about what that truly means and what that meant for like the series itself. What are the social aspects behind Storm losing her powers, especially the representation of characters. Her being one of the few black characters that you're going to see, and then we lost Bishop, and now Storm's powers is gone. So aside of those talks themselves, it was the sidelining of Storm throughout the scope of the series. I mean, for this season itself, especially when we talked at length about how she probably could have solved this issue once Magneto just decided to turn the power off. She is capable of these things. I went and brushed up on a little bit of other Storm stuff, because outside of abusing other people in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with her, I mean, she was, and listen, for those video game people out there, she was busted with infinites and whatnot. So I'm just like, just want to see a little bit more Storm, as aka Mother, as I famously have been calling her this entire season, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people do. But yeah, I would just will love to see more of her story and see her featured more, because I felt like she was getting sidelined a lot. And even if it's a story of this is just coming off the heels of her getting her powers back and whatnot, I mean, Storm still is a massive threat, and she can still do a lot more than what she was portrayed with in the whole Bishop fight and whatnot. She could have folded this man.
Bastion, you mean?
I mean, I said Bishop. I mean Bastion.
Like,
Bastion. And the whole Bastion fight. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, because she could have folded this man. So, like, I was just like, wasn't really feeling that. Jubilee. I noticed a lot of other people, like, because I was getting more X-Men stuff onto my feed and whatnot. A lot of people were not happy with her representation either, throughout the course of the series, because I mean, not knowing much of the comic book lore behind her, even when I was watching the original series, didn't really know much. I mean, outside of what we were shown in the first 5 seasons and whatnot, I really didn't know much about Jubilee until we did that episode about Montundo. And I'm reading this and I'm just like, yo, is this literally is that like a like an atom bomb, like, or a nebula? Like, bro, this is broken. Like,
yeah.
so I would hope for the next season to develop more on that. Especially instead of just, I guess you could say, sidelining her with this relationship with Sunspot, who had, and I know a lot of people had issues with just his overall portrayal. So hopefully they'll, dive in a little bit more on featuring her. I mean, just, yeah, when I think about it, the full brunt of the entire season was really about Magneto. He got the most screen time, he got the most story dedicated to him. And he had technically the best character arc, mainly because he was featured the most. So this really was like Magneto, the season. And while I personally am not angry or mad at that because of how well it was done, when I look back and I think about it, I'm like, the weight that was on this man's shoulders, technically he was set up to fail from, like, just in the 5 seasons. So if we're just gonna go off of Magneto just in the animated feature alone, just the 5 seasons that you had with him from the past years, and just taking this season alone or whatnot, we had this discussion at length how Magneto was right, how people were just like, Magneto, he's a dirtbag with stuff he did in the past, can't make up for what he's doing right now, he didn't try hard enough and whatnot. And when I sat back and I think about everything that we got from him, I was like, this man was put in a position technically where he was supposed to succeed, but everything was made for him to fail. There was too many obstacles in his path that would just easily have him revert back to what people, or they were like, so that they basically revert back so that people could be like, oh, we were right about Magneto, type of thing. There wasn't really a chance, or there were chances, but it was so minuscule in terms of, like, for him to grow into this, this leader that can lead the X-Men, that can, help, or I should say, the dream that Xavier had, and, like, so he could fill those shoes and whatnot. And then, unfortunately, the shoes that he was trying to fill were muddy. They already had dirt on them before he even.
That's a good way of putting. That's a very good way of putting it. That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, like, he they were already muddy to begin with, and it's just like, I'm supposed to clean this and continue to walk forward. It was the deck was becoming increasingly stacked against him. So it's like, when I don't fault Magneto for falling back into, his ideals, and says that but I can't even say falling back into his ideals, because I still feel like he's grown as a person with the previous 5 seasons. And if you were, because a lot of people also jumped into this series without any prior knowledge of X-Men, the first 5 seasons. And I feel like the way that they, I feel like people could do that, actually. I know we talked about it on our stream. I feel like people could do that, actually. But I feel like those who did watch the first 5 seasons would have even more context to how Magneto became the person he is. Even if you didn't read Magneto's comics or anything like that, just the progression alone from what we saw in those original 5 seasons to what we get in this, 97 season, just seeing his character evolve all those years, a lot of people don't have that context. And I think that context would have helped and probably would have gave people maybe a different perspective, because it's not like, I don't think he necessarily reverted all the way back to what he was, just, I mean, he did some shit, right? He did some shit, but I don't think he reverted all the way back into that. And now, saying turn off the power, there's probably some casualties that will never get spoken of, unless somebody in season 2 says, well, these are all the people you hurt by turning the power off and whatnot. We won't know, right? But in the grander scheme of things and whatnot, the stuff that Xavier did to him in the last episode, I mean, Jesus, like, could have ruined both of them, right? Literally could have ruined both of them. Was on the verge of having them both wiped away, and it's like, damn, I put you in the shoes that you were supposed to fill, and now that I figure out that you aren't the one, now I need to remove you. I'm the only person that can really deal with the situation. I'm the only person that can make you better. Kind of selfish, not gonna lie. I, Cola, as I see it, right, I mean, like, it's like you put this person there, you left the situation. I'm talking about Xavier, folks. You left the situation to be with the bird people, as people keep saying, right? But there was so many other issues, and I mean, like, I guess you could say that's the really cool part about it, with the entire situation. And what I specifically like about X-Men is that there are so many moving parts, so many characters that can get screen time. Like, I didn't even talk about the whole Madeline Pryor, Scott, Cable.
Talk about it.
Like,
go ahead. I'm here to listen.
No, I'm just saying, I haven't even talked about any of those things, and that's one thing that I truly like about this series. It's 10 episodes, but damn, like, look how many character like plots that are going on all at the same time and still made to be coherent, and you still have so much source material to pull from, to pull the trigger, be like, all right, you know what, maybe we're gonna pull off this apocalypse thing that Kayla's been talking about since Gambit's death. Kayla was just like, all right, what if Gambit gets Bronx bad have death apocalypse? I was like, I don't know anything about that, but that shit sound cool. That's all I was like, like, I was just like, okay. I said Gambit could come. I mean, because there's one thing, like, death isn't finality in X-Men for the most part. There's ways that characters could come back, and I thought that's pretty cool, because I mean, usually, I mean, in some animes, depending on the situation, death is finality in them. There's permadeath and whatnot, and usually a Deus Ex Machina way brings a character back. But in X-Men, you have a villain that has, I mean, these people have mutations that have some broken ass abilities and whatnot. Way more believable than having a straight up Deus Ex Machina. Not saying that there's Deus Ex Machina stuff, because that affects media as in general. Lord knows, Endgame. But yeah, finding the one possibility out of millions. Yeah, we're not gonna even get into that. But yeah, like, you have the soap opera of Cyclops, Jean, Logan, that was going on. Then you had my favorite soap opera, which was Rogue, Cyclops, Magneto.
You mean?
I said my bad. Rogue, Gambit, Magneto.
I mean, look, I get it, because I don't know if you know, in X-Men Evolution, Rogue has a little bit of a crush on Scott, so I think that's probably us talking about it, kind of seep through your brain. But there are so many names and so many plot points going on. It's understandable that you get all of it mixed.
Yeah, like, I was getting So that was say another plot that's going on. Storm and Forge, right? That's another thing that was going on. Jubilee, Sunspot. I mean, his whole thing with his family, the connotations of that, especially as Kayla was speaking on, like that coming out, within the queer community, right? So that's what's that 4 right there. You have, well, then you could go back to Xavier and Magneto. That's 5. I mean, then Xavier's own issues, where this man was, as he was
with
doing
with Lilandra and
yes, yeah, that going,
and all her family drama.
Yeah, that was going on, man. And I mean, then you bring back Yeah, like the fact that I could that was just six. I'm probably sure there's a few other ones that didn't touch upon. But like the fact that there's so many moving parts and that the story was weaved in this way, I am so glad that this isn't just a one and done season. That
Mm.
for sure. Um, and just the like, I'm looking forward more to reading more material over the course of this year towards
Uh-huh.
before the next season comes out. So at least a little bit more in the known of what things are going to happen, because I like to have more talks like theory wise about what they possibly can do. And yeah, we're gonna be watching some more X-Men stuff, so maybe that was a spoiler for some people. They didn't know because we didn't really announce it yet. But I mean, by the time this comes up on YouTube, we already probably announced it in our other videos. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more and just having some more knowledge about what might be happening for the next season 3 as well. Season 2 is already is in post production. So that news I think is known to most people. Season 3 is season 3 and 4 are going to be now in production. Of course, different writer. So we have a lot of time to grow with this, and so I'm really excited. Overall, I would agree the season would be a 9.
Mm-hmm.
I would differentiate with the scores that they did give. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna so episode 1 they gave episode 1 and 2 they gave a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 3 was an 8. 4 was a 7. 5 was a 9. I felt that was disrespectful. That's a 10.
Yeah. That's just the thing.
Yeah,
Rewatching it, I was like, just honestly, just to
mhm,
caveat real quick, just
yeah,
rewatching it and just the actual setup of lulling you into, okay, we're talking about serious stuff. It's
mhm,
very soapy. Scott's laying down some facts.
yeah,
Gambit's laying down some facts on what it's like to. I mean, everyone talking about birthing a nation and
mhm,
like what that entails, but like it starts off as we're building a conversation of
mhm,
what it means to be a mutant and what it means to start a whole new nation for your people, right? And
yeah,
what that takes. And just the politics of that and the politics of being a minority in a way. It's like small steps into that. To it just like I said it when we watched it, I was just
mhm,
like, yeah, I was very much prepared for this just to be a talking episode,
mhm,
no action. That would have been great. To just how fast it escalated so quickly into the genocide on of Genosha was
yeah,
so, yeah, I'd give that a 10 just on setup alone to lull you into a false sense of security and be like, guess what? No.
yeah, yeah. Like when I saw that, I was just like, yeah, nah, 9, nah, like no way. Uh, but yeah, after that they gave episode 6 or 7, episode 7 and 8 were 8s, and then episode 9 and 10 were 9s. Yeah, my main gripe is that I felt like episode 5 definitely was a 10. I felt like episode 10, I would give it a 10. I think it's for a season finale. What it achieved, some of the things they put in motion. I mean, for those readers like yourself who know the characters more that appeared at the end, I feel like the cameos that were shown were pretty cool as well. The overall excitement, like just that's just if you're just a basic Marvel fan, right?
Hmm.
You would know some of the other cameos that came about, like the tension of it. I felt like that was worthy of a 10. If I mean, I think that episodes 4 and 6, once again, that features Storm, like the reason they got a 7 is because I felt like Life Death should have been one episode itself.
Hmm.
And I felt like even if Life Death was an episode by itself, I could see it getting a higher rating.
Hmm.
Because it wouldn't, like, the way that it was split was so weird.
Hmm.
Because you know, and I think that's the other reason why they probably gave it a episode 5 and 9, because I do think if Life Death was just one complete episode by itself, I could have seen it getting an 8.
Hmm.
And this is just with how much Storm wasn't necessarily featured as much, but I think it would have been a nice treat. I mean, you could do the entire Life Death episode after episode 5. So Life
Mm-hmm.
Death could have been episode 6 and been just as impactful with all the things that are going on, so you could still see Storm's reaction to learning the news of what just happened on Genosha, right? Where would that leave Matundo? That's the interesting question, because Life Death Part 2 was an entire episode by itself. And it kind of does feel like Matundo did get left out. Like, well, it felt odd and
Mm-hmm.
out of place, considering it was attached to Life Death Part 1. So if there was anything I had to think about that, okay, maybe deserved a little bit more. I mean, maybe that's where they could have went a little bit more, including with the Sunspot, Jubilee relationship slash the stuff that's going on with Sunspot in the background of things. But I do think, like, if you had to think about something episode wise that was probably the weakest part of the entire series, it would have been Life Debt Part 1, because what it did, or should I say, how it stacks up to every other episode, it did feel out of place to me. But that's to say that I just didn't agree with splitting Life Debt Part 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because you delivered what happened in episode 5 directly afterwards, you immediately want the viewer to go back and be like, oh shit, what's gonna happen next? Like,
Right.
you dropped an F bomb for all intents and purposes, right? Like, everyone's like, WTF. You have everyone in their emotions, and you break that for a week, right? And you give them Life Debt Part 2, but that necessarily isn't bad, right? But I think people's expectation was to go from more so episode 5 to straight into episode 7, because I think episode 7 was also the reveal that of Xavier being
Mm-hmm.
one alive, two, he's in this other place, and then the whole like ending of that episode where you have Xavier just wondering like, oh my god, my X-Men, I need to get back to them and whatnot. um but yeah, other than that, I think the scores, like the nines, I think a lot of the nines are deserved. I think episode 5 once again could be an absolute 10. And I personally would switch around the just like some of the episode orders,
Mm-hmm.
without, because I don't think they'll break the continuity and what
Mm-hmm.
they in the storytelling that they were trying to give out. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see how episode, or should I say season 2, is going to be. I think we're going to get 10 episodes again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just what they're going to feel comfortable with. But I do feel that they can kind of, I mean, they're on a streaming service, right? These episodes can kind of start reaching that 40-minute mark,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it's actually 40 minutes of storytelling and, the 3 to 4 minutes of credits if they want to do that. I think people would enjoy that if you're not going to give people 13
Mm-hmm.
to or more episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Let the episode start, because I mean they did that for the last episode, which
Mm-hmm.
is around 45 minutes or so, like that. So it's not like they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they should take more liberties with that. These episodes are already reaching 28 minutes, but it's about 25 with the credits. Um, without the credits, it's 25. So I think you can elongate the episodes in writing wise, so that you can get more out of these
Mm-hmm.
characters and more story out of these characters. So that's my hopes for season 2. I think this is a 9 verging on 10. Like, if this is something that you can show to like somebody that doesn't know about X-Men, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and they will be just as excited. They might, most people are gonna walk away, and I already know there's a lot of people out there, because there are other content creators on YouTube who know zero about X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
and they're saying that, bruh, this is a 9/10 out of 10 series to begin with, right? So I believe
Mm-hmm.
you can show the casual fan that, and it's the people who have read the comic books like yourself, like. A lot of these people have, I've seen between the 8s and the 10s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen much people give it less than that. But
Mm-hmm.
then we're talking about, there's other arguments that need to be addressed within the series itself, speaking on certain characters and their portrayals. That's where the discussions I've seen more so. in the Twitter space, because that's mainly where I'm seeing this on, or even on like I don't see it as much on YouTube because my algorithm, I have to search it out pretty much type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But when you start interacting, the way social media is with enough posts, you start to get more of them into your feed, into your algorithm for your For You pages, and so you start to see more and more discourse pop up. So, um, yeah, yeah, I'll leave things right there.
Is
Yeah.
well, is there I just is
Mhm,
there a character after watching this season
mhm,
that you walked away from, aside from like Gambit and Rogue because you already
mhm.
liked them at the
Yeah,
beginning, and Storm because you like those, out of those, aside from those three characters,
yeah.
out of all the other ones, is there a character that you were like, I kind of want to know more, like, or it changed your perception of like who this character was going into it?
Honestly, it would have been Magneto.
Hmm.
Because even like the knowledge I had Magneto, um, I thought he was one of the characters I thought was cool. Um, because I like villain characters a lot, but
Hmm.
more so, wanting to know more about him. And now, mind you, he got the majority of time shown to him, so I felt like that's a natural inclination towards him because he is one. Even though he's one of the characters I still like know the least about. Like other
Hmm.
than some of the portrayals that were in the other seasons and whatnot, still the overall character. I think it would have been Magneto. After Magneto, I think the character that I'm more interested in learning more about would have been Jubilee because I
Hmm.
literally know next to nothing about her.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and even with the anime series from beforehand, and then just the portrayal that she had and Matundo like made like I think I mentioned it as well. Like, yeah, I want to know more about Jubilee because she seems
Mhm,
broken.
mhm,
I like her design, I like her antics. She seems like a pretty cool, dope character, but she didn't really get a lot of love this season. So I'm just like, yo, where's the love for Jubilee? Obviously
mhm.
it's gonna be Rogue all day. Like,
Right. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Obviously it's gonna be Rogue all day. Rogue and Gambit, like literally Gambit's my favorite Marvel character, but like it's literally and Rogue is like right behind. Like
Mhm,
literally, like there is no like like obviously those are gonna be my favorites. So you could imagine like, damn son, like they smoked Gambit, bro. That's crazy. But
yeah.
learning more things about, of course, his past, possible future.
Mhm,
So, but yeah, I think it would have been Magneto, but then the second character directly after that would have been Jubilee because I literally know, like, just what we got in this and a little bit of, um, can't even say a little bit, but it's because I haven't seen the OG series in quite a long time. But even getting a refresher and then seeing how Jubilee was in this series, I just want to know more about her.
mhm. Is there a plot in the story that you want them to touch more on going forward into the second and third season?
Um, Given from what we've seen so far, like after the all the cliffhangers and whatnot, I am really interested in seeing how well where is Morph, Logan, Storm, like,
Mhm,
because that seems like something that like community wise a lot of people are not sure where they're gonna go with that.
mhm,
So that's a plot that seems really interesting. And when time gets involved, I am
mhm,
always interested how the people in the future, like, because that's I'm really consistent with this across all mediums, right? When
mhm,
you start interweaving time plots, right, and you have people who travel to the future, I'm always interested how these actions, so meaning the stuff that's going on with Cyclops, Jean, where they're currently at with Nathan, Ascani, right?
mhm,
And I'm really interested in seeing how all that's gonna fold and how they're going to basically come back to the present.
mhm,
More so interested in that than the group that's currently in BC in Egypt right now.
mhm.
With I believe the character I forgot the name he said at the end, but it's Apocalypse. So yeah,
In Salvanor,
it's Salvanor. Okay,
is his government name.
okay, it's all okay. Yeah, like I'm more interested in the future stuff.
Right.
Because of how I just know in other series, like how devastating messing with stuff in the future can affect the past and whatnot.
Mhm,
More in because usually in time stuff, a lot of it always is like, how can I change the past to better the future? I like more series when they go, well, how can I change stuff in the future to affect the present, and then and
Mhm.
alter, the past and stuff like that. So yeah, plot wise, it
Okay.
would be those two. Yeah.
All right. Nice. Out of the characters that you saw on the board, did anyone
Mhm.
pique your interest where you're just like, oh, that, when I was like listing off people, did it seem like
Mhm.
anyone caught your eye, or you're just like, it's just a mass of faces?
Dust, because I've never, I've seen nothing.
Hmm.
Even if I had, I wouldn't even remember. Yeah, that was a character who I know, like I believe I know zero about.
Yeah.
So that was one character. The characters who I'm like interested in seeing, if they get tied into the series as well, with Scarlet Witch, seeing
Hmm.
more Polaris, because I don't really know much about those characters and their involvement
Hmm.
with the X-Men. So that was interesting. I mean, you've talked a lot about Ever Frost, right?
Hmm.
Seeing how where they're gonna go with her story after the whole Genosha incident, because they seem to be weaving like there's so many other stuff too. And then why all these cameos that they keep showing for all these other Marvel characters? Like, are they going to
Hmm.
play bigger roles in the future seasons to come as well? Because that's also something that's interesting to see. What are the older villains that we
Hmm.
just saw? Like, like what are they going to be doing? Like, that's yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right. So overall, what do you give the whole first season, like an overall score?
Oh, yeah, I still give it a 9. Yeah.
Okay.
I say
All right.
it's
Nice.
more yeah, because I'll give it a 9. I disagree with like IGN on what scores they gave certain episodes and
Hmm.
whatnot. Um, but this is a 9 verging on like a 10. Like, this is a 9 verging on a 10. However, there are just other talking points, right? That,
Hmm.
that stuff that I see needed to be done better in my opinion. Like the
Hmm.
storm stuff, yeah, yeah. There's like that's why I'm like I'll stick with the 9 because I think
Okay.
as even if I knew zero about X-Men, I think it would have got a 9 or a 10.
Hmm. Even
Yeah.
just with the things that you notice that are just like, yeah, this, maybe this plot isn't so good, which is fair.
Mhm.
I think that's definitely fair.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd say it gets a 9 out of me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not on some
Nice.
Dwayne Wade for those basketball players out there that know that you just give a 9 out of 10 for everything and f up people's scores. Nah, I
Hmm.
believe like it's for the first season, because I'm expecting the second season and the third season to
Hmm.
be better.
Hmm.
So that's why I'll stick with the 9. Because I'm expecting the next season to be 9 or better. You know,
Hmm.
um, maybe it might happen. We know how seasons are.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are seasons that are better. Sometimes there are seasons that don't hit the mark. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I was very excited to hear everything that you had to say, and I like just listening to your perspective on it and how
Mhm.
what you walked away with and what you noticed, and um the allegories that you put forth about the character plots and stuff like that and talking points. It's very much what I was waiting for this show to wrap up, like, because like I said, you're someone who went into this not really knowing much about it, but
Mhm.
having like a sort of small baseline knowledge of certain things, and
Yeah.
just hearing and seeing your perspective on it, and seeing the effects of this type of storytelling and these characters. Oh yeah, I was definitely like, "Show, hurry up, finish. I don't want you to finish, but finish because I gotta know."
Yeah,
Um,
cause like I'm writing my own series, right? So, and when people ask me about like my own writing, like my own series and stuff like that, like am I doing it for the I should say the Japanese slash Korea, well the Asian market way,
mhm,
where it's like a direct storytelling, like you have one story and if you want it to get adapted, that's just gonna be that one thing. But I always told people like I'm more interested in having it like Marvel, where
mhm,
you can have like multiple characters within a universe, and then they interact and they have like these crossovers and whatnot. I'm more interested in developing something similar. I mean, X Men was a perfect example. Like you can have the X Men, but each of these X Men have like there's Rogue and Gambit, there's Cyclops and Rogue. Wait, no, Cyclops and what was the
Maddie.
Maddie? Yeah, yeah. No. There was a comic that we recently talked about.
It's, the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix.
There we go, Cyclops and Phoenix, right? So like you can have you can have that like be its own standalone, right? And
Mhm.
I would like something like that where I can make, say, a series, even though there might be like a main character, right?
Mhm.
But even the other characters have their own shine. And you
Mhm.
just keep building this universe, this of characters with this much depth and storytelling behind them.
Yeah,
And
so
sure,
it's like
yeah,
just because you have a group doesn't mean that once a character walks away that their story is finished. It's no, obviously that character is going off to do something, so
yeah,
let's go see what that character's doing.
yeah. So I would like that's the goal for me in my writing and whatnot. Because one IP that I know we have not talked about in the last 10 weeks since, well, 11 weeks since we were doing X-Men comic book wise, that I love a lot was Spawn, right?
Mhm.
And how I think it's the Image universe. I think that's what. Don't
Yeah,
quote me on
Spawn
that.
is Image
Image,
Comics, yeah.
Image comic. Okay, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say don't quote me on that, folks. But like like
I'm
I
I'm
do like,
here. I'm
yeah,
here. I'll fix
yeah.
it. I'll work it out.
Like, yeah, like like he's one of my favorite characters and whatnot. But it's like developing, I guess you could say a roster of characters and or like multiple characters and whatnot. It's like one of my goals as a writer. So it's always great to see these other art forms expressed, especially when it's one that can handle one that can handle and juggle multiple different characters. I'll bet some characters get more shine than the others, and
Mhm.
that's a realistic thing. Sometimes I think marketing goes a long way into that and whatnot. Other times I
Mhm.
think it is just the writer's biases that
Mhm.
play a massive role in which characters do get shine, and then how much do they like writing for somebody. Um, you know, so like a lot of questionable things, that we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm glad. Because I like your consensus. As someone who is newer to the IP and the
Mhm,
property, I kind of been seeing just slightly across the board. Obviously, I get more people like me who are
mhm,
into X-Men and just their feelings, which whether positive or negative, I find to be valid.
mhm,
I think the overall negative discourse is very fascinating to me because I think it boils down to how a minority views a minority story versus how non-minorities view minority stories. And also biases of who your favorite characters
yeah,
are and how you want to see things work out. I said from the very beginning when we started watching, my biggest issues were going to be synergy
mhm,
with the overall Marvel Studios, meaning like the MCU and then the Marvel Comics. I'm
yes,
not a fan of Marvel doing any kind of synergy, or I am, but it's how I think they failed in how to synergize a lot of their cross-platforming media in ways that really don't benefit the IPs or the stories that are being told,
mhm,
or the characters that are being presented to you. Pacing is another thing. I think I understand 10 episodes, less episodes is the new way to go for shows.
mhm,
I think if it had 13, it would have allowed a little bit more breathing room for stories like Madeline's story or for uh Jubilees and Storms. It is very much you see how a limited series with an ensemble cast can really affect how each cast member's story is getting told or each character's story is getting told. And like you said, it's definitely clocking biases of people who produce these shows, who write these characters, and where they want to see these characters go. I mean, but it's like that with any property, right? If it's not your own personal creation and you're taking someone else's creation, obviously you're influenced by, like with X-Men, so many other people's perspectives or writing styles for these characters. You take that in, you absorb it, you make up your own ideas, and then you get the opportunity to work with these characters, and then you're just putting how you feel into it and how you want it mapped out. Um, I think that's probably it's like a positive and a negative when it comes to something like X-Men. When so many people have their hands in the pot, it's like you're not going to agree with how everyone presents these characters, especially when you yourself have a personal stake in how these characters grow and what their character arc is like and stuff like that, right? Um, but when you can sit down and objectively look at these things, I think that's important. It's important to be able to criticize the things you love and to call these things out. For me, like if I'm gonna start out with how I rate it, I personally want to rate it maybe an 8 out of 10. Though I enjoyed the series so much, that's why it gets such a high score. It gets that high score because some of the reworks it did for someone like Madeline Pryor, and her relationship with Cable. It's not my favorite in the comics, but I love how they weave that to be a different sort of relationship in the cartoon. Um, its own retelling of this of these stories that have come before the production of this show, trying to weave in trying to weave in stories from a show that was in the 90s and still kind of continue that on. It's not a reboot, it's a continuation, right? It's not a real it's I guess it would be like a relaunch in a way, but it's not like the DuckTales reboot where it's like a cartoon from the 80s, it's its own thing, and then in the 2000s you have what I consider the absolute best reboot to ever come out of anything. It's its own different show, but still holds element of the 80s cartoons and the comics and the Disney properties, but it's still very much its own thing. Uh, Fresh and new for the 2000s. This is trying to be fresh and new for the 21st century, but trying to continue a story that happened in the 90s, right? Trying to seed in those elements, which in some ways it did. And I do think that this is a series you can just jump into, and I would hope in watching it makes people interested in wanting to watch the original series and then wanting
Mhm.
to read the comics that these stories have been adapted from. Um, I agree with you about people's ING's. Is it ING that did the
Yeah,
rating?
ing. Yeah,
Ratings on episode 4 and 6.
yeah,
Um, in rewatching those episodes and being able to reabsorb it and take it in and sit with what I perceive the message of those episodes to be about change, about family, about identity and self. Um, I think are super important, especially as aspects of the overall arcing X-Men story. What it means to be a minority in these spaces, but a minority that also has its own life that still continues even throughout the world turning around, right? Which
yeah,
is what I've mentioned before with how I feel about Life, Death 1 and 2. And Xavier being up in Shi'ar space. Just because you have your own stuff going on and you're trying to work your stuff out doesn't stop the people in your that doesn't stop life from happening,
yeah,
right? But eventually if you're still involved with that life, it's going to catch up to you like it did with Xavier and Storm, and you're going to be like, "Oh shit, what happened?"
yeah.
Um, I do think it did breaking up Life Death into two parts with adding two stories to it,
Hmm.
two different stories to it is a hindrance to it. It should have been its own episode, but like giving it the benefit of the doubt. I could see like with Life Death part 1 and Motendo, it's about Jubilee going through becoming an adult, experiencing change through while experiencing change through her family, her larger family experiencing change. Um and what that means. And holding on to things as someone who just yesterday was considered a child to now
Hmm.
you're no longer considered a child, and what that has to do for all of us and even in the real world, because people tell you even though 18, 19 are still teens, and I
Hmm.
personally think anyone up to 21 is still a child depending on circumstances. All our life circumstances are different. um we're just getting out into the world, but literally just yesterday we were told go play with our dolls or and shit like that, right? It's
Hmm.
just we have to manage these things, but in managing things for our individual selves, we also have to deal with what our family is going through and the huge upheaval she had to deal with Xavier being gone, but then it's her one of her older brother figures and sister figures having trouble in their marriage, and then there's an extra person in that marriage and a child now you also have to deal with, and the ramifications of that, because obviously those emotions aren't just going to stop in that situation, they're going to bleed over into your life because you're there to witness it.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out how to work with someone you once viewed as a villain and what that means to you, and someone who was in opposition of you the entire time you've been with this family, and going forward in that. Meeting someone new and fresh, someone your age, because let's face it, I think probably if I'm going like age-wise, I think the only person closest to her age would probably be Rogue, but Rogue is still at least a good 5 to 6 years older than her.
Yeah.
At least in her early to mid 20s. And then everyone else, I think Gambit's around that age, but it feels like Scott, obviously Logan is the oldest, but like Scott, Jean, and more for probably late 20s, early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's also a different phase of life. Who you are at 18 isn't who you are at 30, and being around older people and just seeing their drama, like, you don't want that. I just want to have fun. I just want to
Yeah.
live my life. I don't want to be caught up in this. I want to play video games and chill out and have a good time, at least for one day, which completely understandable. It was her birthday, right?
Yeah.
um but mirroring, just her going through understanding through older video game jubilee that it's good to grow up. It's time to grow up, sadly. You could hold on to those feelings, but you shouldn't force yourself to be stuck in this place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then on the other hand, with Storm, it's dealing with, well, now this facet of my life is over, this part of me is gone. How do I become my true new individual self?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I feel like that story was telling, how to become a new individual within this new phase of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with Life Death Part 2 and then Xavier and the Shi'ar stuff, it's that whole thing of I'm trying to figure my shit out, I'm trying to move on, and oh shit, but the family back home is in trouble.
I need to get
Life
back to
has
my
caught up to
X-Men.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Like two people who are so important to the X-Men, who are so important to their family, out there trying to have an individual life from that, a separate life from that.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be called back home. And it's not anyone's fault, really. Well, it's Bastion's fault and the government's
Yeah.
fault, but like, it's not the X-Men's fault and it's not Xavier Storm's fault. It's just how life works. Um, and I think that also then mirrors what Xavier wanted for Scott and Jean, to be able to go live a life separate from the X-Men, to go off and raise a family, and not have to worry about constantly fighting or try and or being here to protect everyone because they are his oldest students. It's like, yeah, I want to give you that opportunity to go figure out your own shit without having to worry about our shit,
Yeah.
right? um so I think, I love that. I love if you really pay attention, the crafting of the themes and story elements throughout are there. If you want to take someone like Morph and Madeline, who are both been abused by Sinister, and how they dealt with it, though I feel like with episode 3 and then the abrupt change of Jean into Maddie is a pacing issue and an episode issue. It is one of those things where a lot of people question, well, why choose the Goblin Queen? Did you like
Mm-hmm.
goblins and you didn't tell anyone? Like, but then that would have
Yeah.
given people clues that she's not Jean. But it's like, why that name? And then why did you choose Madeline Pryor as a name? Like,
Yeah.
what made you what why? Like, so it's one of those things where you look at the plot and you go, but why were these choices made for this character? Whereas in the comic books, they set you up, this is Madeline Pryor, this is what happens for her to become the Goblin Queen, this is what happens for us to discover that she is a clone of Jean Grey, and what that means for her and Jean going forward. This was just like, okay, here's Jean, but it's not Jean.
Yeah.
Now here's the Goblin Queen. Now here's Madeline. Now what is Jean gonna do about that? How does Jean feel about that? Because then
Yeah.
Madeline's gone, and all we get from her is a reintroduction in
Yeah. When you.
Genosha,
Yeah.
and finding out that she's still technically, I don't know if you would call it a psychic affair, because up until a month ago she was married to Scott and they do have a kid, so it's like, is the question is Scott really cheating on Jean, or is he cheating on Maddie, who's like, so it's like, it's stuff like that where you go, I would have loved for this story to get an opportunity to be told a little bit better and not so rushed. Um and I say that especially for Morph and Matt. Morph, because Morph is really in like 2 or 3 episodes in the original series, and then becomes like a mainstay in this, and they don't really get that much shine. It kind of feels like they're still dealing with their past traumas, which is fair because Sinister is reintroduced, so it's like trauma response, whatever. But it's like, okay, but I would have loved to have at least 2 episodes of Morph and Maddie dealing with this sinister stuff and connecting on that level,
Mhm.
because they both have experienced this type of trauma, and Jean eventually, because Jean has also been abused by Sinister, but she would need to come to that later. Like, if I'm writing the stuff, if I'm writing the story, it's gonna be like 25 episodes, but like, um, but that would, just to have those two interact a little bit more after the fact would have been really nice too.
Mhm.
Um, and and then just seeing the feelings Morph has for Logan kind of weave its way through all the episodes, I thought was really interesting and nice, from a queer perspective, and what that means for these characters. I do like that they kind of put Logan on the back burner, because in the last 20 odd years, but even before that in comic books, Logan always gets pushed to the front. So I will not be mad at this series for taking this character that you can find 100 other
Mhm.
medias for, with it's just stories about him, for him, by him, whatever. Like, even in the new era, I think we're getting 2 separate Logan books. Is it 1 or 2? I don't know, but, like, we just had a Logan book, like, he's just a character that's always gonna get a solo series, so pushing him aside. Oh, and then really making him, yeah, it's really making him the forefront character of the X movies. I felt that did a disservice to how people also view the X-Men as well,
Mhm.
in general. Um, One of my biggest gripes is Days of Future Past, how it's originally a story about Kitty and Mystique and the Brotherhood, and they were just like, well, we want it to be about Logan instead. And I'm just like, sure, okay. Um, but yeah. Uh I think, like, if we're gonna talk about other negatives, it's definitely the handling of Sunspot, Storm, and Bishop. I think I said it in episode 2 at the end. After Storm lost her powers so quickly within the new series, and that's another pacing
Mhm.
issue, that there wasn't enough family time with the X-Men. With Storm, she pretty much gets taken out for the majority of the season. And even
Mhm.
though you have the original 5 seasons, it's still like, well, if you're a new watcher,
Yeah.
she is gone right away. Bishop is gone right away. Bishop is gone by episode 3.
Yeah.
And then you really are left with a group of passing white people on your team. And then you have the one character whose superpower is being hypermelanated,
Yeah.
and you've changed the texture of his hair and his skin color. And he is essentially whitewashed, and he's been whitewashed in other media. Like, I think at some point we should watch New Mutants and talk about it. Um, but I know in our comments section there was a comment like, well, he's technically not black in the comics, it's about the coloring. And I'm just like, I read that, I was like, sure, yeah, coloring was different back then, but you can't blame coloring for every single New Mutants issue after that, where he's about Mike's skin tone or slightly darker. Like, you
Mhm.
can't, like, that argument doesn't hold weight. He
Yeah.
is an Afro Latino. He's an Afro Brazilian. Like, He's a dark skin. He
Yeah.
shouldn't be close to my. He should not be close to my color. He should not. I'm Afro Latina. I'm half black, half Puerto Rican. But like my skin. So I know we all come in different shades. But this one character whose power is taken from the sun itself,
Yeah.
and his origin story is uh he was a victim of racism and bigotry, so much so that it triggered his mutation.
Mm-hmm.
And his standing in being in a rich family and stuff like that, it's important to who this character is and how his story gets told. So yeah, I think taking Storm off the table was really crazy so quickly. I understand wanting to tell that story, but I also feel like, yeah, pacing is, I think, it's definitely one of the biggest knives to the back in this series. Because yeah, then you are left with a bunch of white people in a room, and what do you do with that, right? Even though they are all a minority, they
Mm-hmm.
are still a white minority. And how do we? And of course, they went on to tell the story on how white minorities are still affected in this
Mm-hmm.
way, or in a way, in a negative way. But it goes to show that what a lot of fans have said, um the minority allegory for X-Men is generally a hit or a miss, and a lot of times it can be a big miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is one of those times
Misses.
that it was one of those circumstances, because you, like I said, yeah, you took out Storm, you took out Bishop, and then you had Jubilee, who you didn't really showcase that much, but when you showcase, it was nice. Um, but yeah, the story mostly revolved around white mutants, which I love my family, but we
Mm-hmm.
gotta call it for what it is. Um, and then when you bring back Storm, you bring along Forge, which is great, because I think, having uh Indigenous American stories told, and he's a good example to have, like, to bring in, and he's a fascinating character to look at when it comes to being a minority who works for the government and who's also struggling with who they are in their community, even though that's kind of, I'm taking that just from a comics aspect, because they
Mm-hmm.
sort of touch on it in the cartoon but not really. um So I bring him along, considering he was in the OG series, I think is great. But then you kind of then regulate them off to the side again,
Yeah.
um, which again, optics are not so good. Um, people I can definitely see people's argument about the handling of Storm and her power usage in the last couple episodes. Um, and I agree to a point where it's just like, well, we know, because they showed us in the first two episodes that she's a legitimate threat. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense to have this woman be tied down and choked out, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it doesn't make any sense for someone who has powers over electromagnetics to be like, I can't figure this out. Oh, we got to go to the
Yeah.
source. I
Yeah.
don't know
Storm
what
would
to
have phone
do.
bashed him, bro.
Right. It's just
She
like,
would have pulled
I
up
don't
this
know.
man.
I don't know, guys. But then if I was in the room, I'd be like, you know what to do. You can start fixing this just a little bit. Like, just well, you can. And then we go, and then we talk to him. But like, yeah, I think I mentioned either in the rewatch of episode 10 or in when we filmed our reaction for it, it's like, you could have just also called Lorna, who has power over magnetism, and had them work together to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
But I guess
It
we
wasn't
wouldn't
in.
have
Yeah.
had the dramatic storytelling of Charles and Magneto at the end. You needed a reason for that to happen, I suppose. Um, so I look at it in that aspect too. Like, you need a reason to tell, because like you said, I agree. I think the star of this season was definitely Magneto and
Mhm.
his story. He definitely showed out in the most episodes.
Yeah.
Or is featured in the most episodes. But it is the handing off the baton, Charles handing off the baton to Magneto, what that meant for Magneto, and then what it means for their story at the end of the day. Um, so I guess you needed to build up to that,
That
and the
baton was made out of
and
sand.
right. Um, but like, it is. it's still very okay. Um, but then I have to look at it as like, well, it is an ensemble cast, and I guess you have to try to give everyone their finish him moment, right? So you need, like, for me, it was like when Nathan Cable was fighting Jean, and I just kept going, she's gonna Phoenix out at some point, right?
Hmm.
She's gonna Phoenix
Yeah.
out at like that. What is happening? Like, you can't kill Madeline and then kill Jean Grey again. None of this is
Yeah.
making any sense. So they needed to have a Phoenix moment.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, it's like, and then Rogue's moment was her breakdown, and then her storyline in Genosha. But again, it's like, one of my biggest gripes and a few other people's biggest gripes is Rogue's story is really centered around the men in her life, which does a disservice to her as a character. Other people have also pointed out that at no point in the season did she take any of her teammates' powers.
Hmm.
So it's also like you took your obvious tank, um, and decided just to have use her second basic power set when she could have like helped Cyclops out or helped Jubilee or took a little bit of Jean's psychic abilities,
Yeah.
telekinetic abilities, and or help Storm out. Like, I mean, I guess the only way I could wash that away is like, well, I guess too many psyches in her brain would get her too confused, and then she'd be taken out. But like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just there were fixes for situations in the show where I was just like, as even if I hadn't read comics, I would still question, um, like, why wasn't this done? Like, I don't know, but I didn't write the show. They should hire me to write the show, but I didn't write the show. So, I think all criticism towards Bo DeMeo is warranted. Um, I think praise for him and what he's been able to do is also warranted. Because if it wasn't for him pushing certain storylines
Yeah.
the way that it was, we wouldn't have been impacted as much as we were, and we wouldn't be having the conversations that we're having now, right?
Yeah.
And then also the conversations that have also erupted in the Marvel company, seeing that X-Men has been and always will be a viable, very important, impactful IP.
Hmm.
So it's nice to give them that uppercut of refreshment because X-Men was running shit in the 80s and the 90s, and in the 2000s because Marvel is a petty bitch was like, well, we're
Yeah.
gonna decimate you, we're not gonna make any more cartoons, you're not gonna be
Yeah.
featured in any more video games.
Yep, that's what
um
they started to do, and that was the wrong course of action. Cause,
yeah,
well, I mean, now they want to do everything because they want to have the Marvel animations, Marvel streaming, maybe.
yeah, no,
But
I
yeah,
think with how well X-Men 97 has done
yeah,
and the reveal of Marvel Rivals, it all plays in that corporate capitalist game
yeah.
because the obviously I don't know when things are meant to be scheduled, but it's kind of an obvious to be like, oh well, by episode 4 everyone's real excited,
Mhm.
episode 5 is that everyone's real excited. Well, look, here's a video game where the X-Men are once again featured in. Let's get
Yep.
talking about that. You guys are excited for that shit too.
Marvel
We're gonna
Rivals.
start a
Yep.
streaming service. We're gonna re-release, I mean, my hope is we're gonna release all these games.
Yeah.
But it is very much just like you have to clock the game, and it's also clocking the game of synergy too. What's happening in comics, and it's been a very interesting day on X Spoilers Twitter. Um, you can just see how they're trying to bring things back to basics, so that in the hopes that new people who watch X-Men 97 are will want to come in and jump in and read these comics, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but
Yeah.
it personally in my opinion does a disservice to the story that's has been told in the last couple years, because you and good example is how their how the game of capitalism and company greed affected these comic book stories in the 2000s, how
Hmm.
it brought upon the decimation into X-Men comic books, where the mutant community was brought down to 200 less mutants. Um, the storytelling at the time too, the retconning of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch as Magneto's children, how they were made to be no longer mutants, but now they're flirting with the idea that they're mutants again
Mhm.
because they're seeing that, oh, right, that's right, in the this keep okay, maybe we'll walk this back, and I don't know what we're doing, but they're doing something. And yeah, just it does a disservice to how writers and creators can tell these stories, in my opinion,
Yeah.
when the corporate hand is also in the pot. Um, Now, if we're talking about like Marvel Animation branching out, I mean, considering that Marvel Animation was What If, and What If has been pretty steadily popular. I mean, I don't know so much about last season because I haven't caught up on the last season, but it brought more of an attention to Marvel Animation.
Mhm.
Disney Plus acquiring all the animated series, so that's rebirth interest in Marvel Animation altogether.
Yeah.
Um, I think how popular Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is, also very telling, and it's also very nice. Um, because Marvel live action was kind of here or there and floundering, but also due, in my opinion, to corporate messing up stuff. I
Mhm.
still stand by the Runaways and Cloak and Dagger being some of the best teen shows or Marvel produced TV shows. Same thing with Legion. If I'm looking like outside of what the MCU timeline is,
Mhm.
um, outside of that, the other Marvel shows they were producing were pretty good. They just never gave them any love, in my opinion, or proper promotion. Um, but I know people have also been calling for, since Spider-Man made an appearance twice in '97, want that Spider-Man '98 to be brought about. I personally
Mhm.
think that's a bad idea, and it's no hate towards Spider-Man. I love Peter Parker on a baseline level. The Spider-Man theme song runs through my veins. But Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man's supposed to come out. I
Mhm.
personally feel like if they start talking about doing Spider-Man '98 or go dipping their hand outside of anything that is just currently X-Men '97, instead of allowing X-Men '97 to breathe and, reinvigorate the IP that is X-Men like it's doing, it will also downplay what can happen, or it can all, in my opinion, be a hindrance to Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which new art has come out for, and I think people should check it out. I'm really excited for
Mhm.
this cartoon. It looks really cool. I love the art style, and I'm excited. Plus, you guys also have 100 other Spider-Man cartoons.
Hey
You
man,
have a hundred
we
other
want
Spider-Man
more.
cartoons.
We want
Like,
more.
go watch
Yeah.
one of those. Really, just
Why can't we have both? Why can't we have both X-Men and more Spider-Man?
because it's excuse me, it's like how I feel about Wonder Woman. If you guys keep like, if I just want one more, I just want more
Mhm.
one more, then the X-Men will stop getting stuff and it will be like a Wonder Woman thing. Wonder Woman has literally little to nothing.
Mhm.
Or movies like Batgirl would get thrown in the garbage because it's just, I think we need to be more we have to be smarter about what we consume and what we ask for. Especially like I said, when you are someone like a Spider-Man fan or a Batman fan or Superman fan, when you have 100 different things to watch, but you want one more, it's like, hey, but you guys keep asking for one more.
Mhm.
You're not allowing the other voices like myself to be heard because companies are going to automatically assume, as they do, oh yeah, Spider-Man is a huge success. Let's just put more money towards that and put no money towards anything else, which we have
Mhm.
seen over the years. And then when that fails, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame us as a collective,
Mhm.
right? When they don't promote it and these shows don't get seen, they're just going to blame us for it.
Mhm.
Just go back and watch all the other stuff you have, guys. Please, Jesus.
Yeah,
Um,
they're gonna,
like,
in business, they're gonna keep doing it because when they're gonna stick with old reliable. That's usually, I mean, even us in this business, like when something works, we usually try to stick with it.
mhm,
And when we see when something we want to try new doesn't exactly work, then we end up reverting back to what works.
mhm.
There's just a philosophy that just follows in all businesses. So as they see
I
that
mean,
Spider-Man is
Yeah,
popular,
true.
they'll try iterations of it. Yeah.
And I get it, but it also hinders creativity. It also hinders other IP properties
Hmm.
and other characters that so like the whole idea that they're, even though it's a silly idea, that there aren't any black characters or Hispanic characters or Asian characters or Arab characters. They're there.
Hmm.
They just don't highlight them. And the reason why they don't highlight them is one, because a lot of it is very racist characterizations and characteristics and stereotypes,
Hmm.
and fair. But if they highlight them and change it to update them, uh, we can see ourselves in these characters instead of going, well, we don't exist and I'm so sick of us not existing. We're there. It's
Yeah.
just no one knows because no one talks about it, right?
Yeah.
Because they just keep showing you all the same white faces all the time. And it's like, okay, great,
Yeah.
fun for the 5 Spider-Man fans, but what about the 3 X-Men fans or the 3 Storm fans who, like I'm saying,
Yeah.
because of biases and that idea of, well, if it works, it works, it takes out these characters of color or these female characters and does a huge disservice to the fans who are willing to put money, time, and attention
Hmm.
and to, here's $100. Yes, give me a Wonder Woman animated series. But you won't, because we have a Superman series that is coming out with the season 2, which I like,
Hmm.
fine. And another 2 new Bat Family stuff, and because Harley Quinn was a hit, I guess, she's getting her own animated series, but how many female characters are in that? We're just
Hmm.
telling the same old Joker and Harley story again. It's like,
Yeah.
it is very like, this is all happening in such a short amount of time too. It's not like this is stuff that's happening in like 50, 60 years. We're just taking it, let's say, in 20 years. And in 20 years, how many Spider-Mans have we had in live action?
Hmm.
How many Harleys are we getting now? We're getting a new Harley and Lady Gaga. Like, it's just like, okay, branch out. There are other characters, other IPs that you
Yeah.
as a company can definitely make money off of because the audience is there. Um, and if you just keep feeding the general audience the same thing, then the general audience is just going to get stagnant and then complain about superhero fatigue. And it's just like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And the reason why you feel is superhero fatigue because you're seeing the exact same stories told
Hmm.
over and over and over again. That's superhero fatigue. Not
Yeah.
like, well, here's the new series about this person. I don't want to watch it anymore. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's also about promotion too, because since I like this stuff, I look for the other IPs that are like Doom Patrol
Yeah.
or Legion or The Gifted. But I also know people don't know about these shows
Yeah. Because I
because they're
mean,
not getting
yeah.
promoted.
Yeah. Well, it's the promotion argument's always something I find fascinating because it's the promotional, mainly the marketing tactics, right? Because
Mm,
if they're all usually assigned the same type of marketing budget, but it's like who are you marketing it to, more so. Reason I say that is because um, within the on the movie spectrum, when I was working in the movie field before all this YouTube K-pop stuff and whatnot, right? The way that the budgets are really broken down, like, because everyone gets a general flat budget, right?
mhm.
And as the like when you're assigned to film company, you get the licensing, the rights and whatnot. The more the reasons why they always tend to go with the 90% that's already succeeded is because it's like this. If it's your first project, let's say you are a brand new company, what was the Rage Bait Studio? Let's say you're Rage Bait Studios,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And you're first, and you got the license, and the license that you're going to get from, let's choose DC for example, right?
Mhm.
Um, and if you're gonna take Spider-Man, or not Spider, if you're gonna take Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, you have to ensure the profits, like, for each of them that they're going to sell. So Spider-Man, I keep saying Spider-Man. Superman is gonna
Superman.
call, yeah, Superman, because Spider-Man's, that's my boy. But Superman is gonna is gonna cost middle of the road because they look at how many successful Superman films there were. And I have not seen all of them, but you know, Man of Steel and such forth, right? They're gonna look at all of those. Then they're gonna look at the Batman series that have done well. They have Dark Knight, right? And they just did this new the Batman, I think it was called, with the
Robert Pattinson,
Robert
and
Pattinson. Yeah,
I do not like that movie, but
I
that's a conversation for
yeah,
another
I
time.
haven't seen it. I'm eventually gonna check it out. And then you have Wonder Woman, right?
Mhm.
Now, aside because the controversy of Gal Dort, well Gal Gadot, yeah,
Gal Gadot.
Yeah, her, her controversy aside, right?
Right.
Now if you're a new studio, right? If you're Rage Bait Studios, and you have the option to choose from those three IPs, right? More likely than not, they're going to try to build off the back of Batman because Batman has
Right.
been proven to be popular, and now, but you see the damage that was done is when the I feel like the actors, producers, and directors share so much culpability, along with the like more so than say the writers themselves, because the writers, like for instance, right now, me and you could write a script for Wonder Woman, right? And
Mhm.
it could be the best script in the world. We can pitch it, a studio can pick it up, right? But our fate is now in the hands of the director, the producers, and the people who license it out because they got to figure
Mhm.
out, is this going to make enough money? Like how much money we're gonna throw at it? Like the script could be like really really good, right? Because I mean, you can only imagine if the script that we put out was bad. Then
Mhm.
you know, but people still pick up bad scripts for a movie, and then they'll still put it out, and then they wait from there. But it's like, you know, the writers themselves are already handcuffed by the producers. The producers have so much power within all these things, and they're thinking money mine, right? They're thinking about what's going to put more butts in seats, right? And that's why they're always going to pursue the Batmans, the Supermans, and they're going to give, especially if they're a brand new studio or if they're one of the largest studios in the world, because they're thinking more dollar signs, right? And what I notice is there isn't really an indie scene, or maybe, all right, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but there really isn't an indie scene when it comes to like some of these indie films, and some of the ones that come in film
Are you-
festivals that feature superheroes.
Oh, okay.
That,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, of course, yeah. That's what I want to say, like superhero stories, right? Because I think that's truly where some of these chances can be like can happen, with a lot of these short feature films and then even feature length films, that are passed in, say, like the Tribeca Film Festival, or you know, Sundance Film Festival, right? Where you know they can get invited to have some of these superhero, like stories. Like one of the time traveling stories, I think Everywhere, Nowhere, in hey, what's the name of this movie?
Everything,
And
everywhere, all at once.
yes, that one. Okay, so like I have not seen it, but I've heard so much about how it's a good time traveling movie, right?
Mhm.
At the same time that movie came out, Doctor Strange movie was coming out, I believe, and
Mhm.
people were talking about, well, that no, was it Doctor Strange? No, I think it was probably Doctor Strange 2 that came out. It was all right. Maybe my timeline's
Are you
a
talking
little mixed
about?
up.
Are you talking about Multiverse of Madness?
Was that the was it? I think what that
That's
might
the
have been
second.
the
That's
yes.
that's the second Doctor Strange movie.
Yes, yeah, because I know people were having a whole big debate back then about which one was the better like time travel
Oh,
movie.
seeing both.
Yeah.
It is definitely everything everywhere all at once, and this is
Yes.
coming from a person who is a Raimi fan, a
Hmm.
Sam Raimi fan,
Hmm.
um, and not necessarily a Doctor Strange fan,
Hmm.
but a multiversal fan, I guess, in a
Yeah.
way. It's that's a we need that's a movie.
Yeah.
That's a movie. That's a
Yes.
movie.
But that studio and the people behind that took a chance with this
Mhm.
unique plot, right? And I think that's where the real changes are going to start to happen. Like these smaller studios, that try to get a bit more funding, right? They're
Mhm.
not going to be like Legendary Pictures, you know. But those studios that do get this bit of funding and whatnot, that I think that's where the revolution is going to start to look at, like more in
Mhm.
these indie films, in these smaller studios that take on these marginalized characters, whether they're making brand new superheroes or they're adapting superheroes from that aren't, you know, the ones that get highlighted, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's where the main change is gonna happen. Also, looking at some of the streaming services, as a writer, you know, and getting an agent and stuff like that. It's gonna take some very talented writers. Like, I listen, I'm a screenplay writer. One of my goals growing up was to, you know, write TV series and novels, which I'm currently doing, right? So it's gonna take some people to start writing these scripts and then keep pushing and pushing and pushing. The thing is, the industry has reservations against anything that isn't like, there's like, all right, why would I want to work on the Z superhero where I can just try to keep pushing nonstop Batman, Superman, what and whatnot, because those are going to be guaranteed to sell. Like, do I really want to take a chance on XYZ? And that's the business mind frame. And it's going to take more people, you know, giving those people a chance at the end of the
Right.
day. And and bringing it back to marketing, that's what it all comes down to. Like, because when you have your marketing budget already decided, you know, and you're looking for the audience is going to gravitate towards the things that they already know, right?
I
Yeah.
think that's giving it a little too much credit though, because again, it's that thing of, well, they only know it because it's the only thing you keep producing. You
Mm-hmm.
like, and everyone wants to talk about risk. Well, it was a risk from the start to make any superhero movie. It
Mm-hmm.
was a risk for to hire
Yeah.
Tim Burton in the 80s to do the Batman movie, or
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s to do a Christopher Reeve. It started out as a risk,
Mm-hmm.
and it in their own, you know, roller coaster ways have paid off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
something that may not have paid off would be something like Supergirl. Though that's one of my favorite superhero movies. I
Mm-hmm.
know it, I'm pretty sure it bombed at the box office and it has more of a cult following than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like, you know, taking a chance on like Blade,
Yeah.
right? It's like it these superhero stories, all of them start out as a risk, but it's very much this, just like, well, it worked this one time, let's hope
Mm-hmm.
it works again, and then it doesn't work twice,
Yeah.
and then
If
they're
it.
like, well, you know what? We're gonna just do it again anyway. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, the issue is if it doesn't work, and for that person, so it's like this. If I'm a writer as well, and I'm going to hitch my say first, because a lot of these people who get the chance, they're more experts in the field, right? But they are writing stories usually in screenplay writing for things that they believe are going to be successful. So these people are writing for the general audience, right?
I mean, that's what
Yeah,
everyone writes.
yeah,
You hope for the success, but I more so
yeah.
mean like, so let's take something like Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have the success of Batman and Batman Returns,
Mm-hmm.
and then Batman and Robin and Batman Forever don't do really well.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're gonna be like, all right, well,
Time to reboot and go to the Dark
time to
Knight side.
reboot another
Yeah.
Batman. Oh, well, that's done. Let's reboot another Batman. Oh, well, this seems sort of popular. Now let's do a Penguin series and a Joker
Mm-hmm.
movie and a Harley Quinn. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you're just pulling from this. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like varying degrees of success and failure, because I know a lot of people don't even like the third Dark Knight
Mm-hmm.
in the third movie of the trilogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, okay, well, 5 years later, well, here's a new Batman,
Mm-hmm.
and Ben Affleck, right? And then Ben Affleck was supposed to get his
Well, because
own
that was
Bat
the Batman
movie,
versus Superman, right?
right?
At that time, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
and that had varying successful, like,
yeah,
degrees of success, whether you're in like Zack Snyder or not. But like,
yeah,
it still had a cultural impact. It still started conversation. It started this whole Snyder Bros movement. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But it is like that, where you take, it's the whole, here's the white male superheroes. So even though it didn't work, but we're gonna give you the female equivalent in Wonder Woman.
Hmm.
Now and aside from Gal Gadot's
Yeah.
controversy in Zionism, um,
Yeah, like
if
that
we want, like,
that
if we
hurt.
talk about
Yeah.
1984, that
Yeah.
movie is not good. Um, but after that movie not being good, as opposed to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey actually being good, there's
Yeah.
no second Birds of Prey movie. Batgirl got junked. Um, Green Lantern keeps coming in and out of production.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, in all honesty, if Chris Evans hadn't stepped down as Captain America, would Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, is it Anthony Mackie as Sam
Eh,
Wilson? Yeah.
Mhm.
Would he be able to be Captain America, or would he be stuck in the Falcon? It's like, necessarily would they have taken a chance on that? No,
Mhm.
just by based off pattern of how these things go.
Yeah.
And then you look at shows something like Doom Patrol, right, which is a DC IP, very good series, one of my favorite, very well written,
Mhm.
that kept, you didn't know, especially in the last two seasons, whether it was coming out or not, when it was coming out. Controversy of where the cast finding out with us that it also got canceled. But no one knows about that show too, right?
Yeah.
Because, and even though it's got, d- but no, there's, I'm trying to remember, was there a Batman episode? Or there wasn't. I'm thinking of Titans. Um, I guess Titans is the example of, well, you could be tied to a Batman thing and still not, but it's also about promotion. Also, that show is weirdly written, the choices in that show. But like,
Outfit choices. Like I
and
have not seen
not
it.
even outfit
But
choices. I
I
can't
know.
even. It's
Yeah.
story choices.
Okay.
I'm still very confused about the death spoilers of Donna Troy, Wonder Girl. Makes no sense. That's what I. Anyway, but it is like, okay, now we back to the original thing of talking about X-Men though.
Mhm.
It's like we have to let X-Men breathe because X-Men have been put on the back burner for so long. And in X-Men we have to let these characters that are big names who have also been sidelined like Storm
Mhm.
breathe before we bring in another Spider-Man thing. When you have Spider-Man, the first three Spider-Man movies, you have several Spider-Man cartoons between a Spider-Man and his amazing friends to Friendly Neighborhood that's just coming out. You just had two Spider-Verse movies showcasing a
Mhm.
different Spider-Man in Miles Morales. Then you have the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Then you have the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. And then
Mhm.
branch out into Morbius and Madam. And I know Morbius, Madam Web, and Craven are business decisions so that Sony can keep the rights of Spider-Man. But it's
Mhm.
still like, okay,
Yeah, and those
and
didn't do
right.
yeah.
But it is also like, okay, well, when I don't know, this is honestly a bigger conversation
Mhm.
when we talk about when we showcase cis white male superheroes versus either a female superhero, cis white or not, or a minority superhero, and how that all plays out in media and what gets promoted and what the uh storylines for these stories. Like, do I keep bringing up Doom Patrol because it is one of the queerest, craziest, weirdest shows, most heartfelt, heartbreaking shows, in my opinion, superhero or not, that you will ever watch. And it's very fine crafting, and
Mhm.
for a show that has butt monsters, and it's right,
Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yes, I know.
for
Yeah.
for a show that has butt monsters, and I don't like butt monsters. uh I don't like things with butts, but like,
They
the
got all
fact
like
that his
big butts and I cannot lie.
right,
So
and
it
these
makes
are
a
butts
lot to hear.
that will rip
Yeah.
your face off. But
Oh
like,
man.
right, but the fact that it has impacted me so much that I'm just like, please, people, watch this show. It's so good. But people don't know about it because HBO and DC and Warner Brothers didn't promote it,
Mhm.
right? And then like, to talk about Batman again, you had Batman Gotham, which is a Batman thing. Then you had Titans, which had Robin, who was a Batman character. Um, then you have countless Batman animated feature, like, so there's so much there. And the fact that, my thing is, the fact that you think it's a smart business decision, and it's only a smart business decision because you don't do anything else.
Mhm.
And even when these movies don't do well, or like the fans are like, this isn't good, 2 months later you're like, well, here's another Batman movie.
Mhm.
Do you see? Like, that's the my wider conversation. But anyway, back to
Yeah.
X-Men. Sorry. Back to, this is like turning into a long ass review that at the end of the day, okay, look,
Yeah.
the treatment of Storm, not great. The treatment of Sunspot, not great. I also saw someone comment in our one of our YouTube videos that they blackwashed Nick Fury. They did not. The Nick Fury that they used in the MCU is based off the Ultimates comics Nick Fury, who is black. And then because people were like, went to the comics and were like, well, why is Nick Fury white? They gave him a black sun so people would recognize that Nick Fury outside of the Ultimate Comics.
Mhm.
So Nick Fury wasn't blackwashed. There's no such thing as blackwashing. I just want to say that there's no such thing. It doesn't happen. You can. Okay.
Oh man, I remember the Hunger Games thing being a whole thing.
And look, my thing is when you craft a character whose story is affected by what they look like
Hmm.
as a minority, changing that character to white changes the whole concept of the character.
Hmm.
That's why, in my opinion, they swapped Roberto's story about bigotry and racism to that being of a queer allegory
Hmm.
because they light skinned him up. Instead
Hmm.
of having him to deal with what it's like being a rich minority, a rich black man, a rich
Yeah.
Afro Latino, they were like, well, here's a light skinned Latino, and what would it be like if he had to hide who he was because
Hmm.
he's gay and what that means?
Hmm.
And that's honestly a different character. That's
Yeah.
not Sunspot. That's not Roberto da Costa. They're two separate characters. So
Yeah.
it is very much just like you could have possibly taken any other character or just had him be Afro, have him have black skin.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I don't. Maybe I'll bring
Maybe
my
that
my
was
overall score to
Paul
7.5.
DeMayo injecting
Right,
himself into the series. Like, yeah, because
um,
that's what it could be right there.
because he is a light skinned man.
Hmm.
He is a queer light skinned man, but I don't know him, so I could only go based off what's been put out in front of me through
Yeah.
his Twitter and how he presents himself, and other stories of how he's presenting himself have been told to me. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, look, animation as the series went on got better. I think having people, like I said, having millennials who have read X-Men comics, who have played the any video game that X-Men have been in, um, who have watched anime, having them throw in all those little things, I will always think is wonderful because it's
Hmm.
like you did your homework. These are little Easter eggs for people like us who are into all this stuff and who can clock it.
Hmm.
I know like you brought up the Rasengan
Yeah. The
that the
Jubilee.
two Jubilees did.
Yeah.
The magical girl transformations for both Madeline and Storm. That's Sailor Moon shit right there.
Yeah.
I know people were saying that the Nathan, I
Yep.
keep calling his name is Cable. His name
Cable.
is Nathan, but
Yeah.
Cable and Jean fight is
The Son Gohan.
Dragon Ball
Yeah.
thing. I don't watch a lot of Dragon Ball, so I don't know the reference.
Yeah.
All the moves from Scott and Rogue are their video game moves, which yes, love because that's fucking great.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. I think the crafting of storytelling of what it's like to someone like Magneto to go through two genocides and how that affects you and what that means. Um, how people perceive you and don't care to understand
Hmm.
your point of view on the situation. The whole thing with I talked about it and I don't need to talk about it anymore at length of how Charles treated Magneto there at the end,
Yeah.
have violated his mind in such a manner. I know someone also pointed out that in our comments on YouTube that it is very weird how at the beginning of the show, all the X-Men made it seem like Xavier was dead, but when he came back, it was just like, oh, we knew you were alive the whole time. That's just like a
Yeah.
weird beat.
Yeah.
Like, why? Like,
Yeah.
if he wasn't dead, then don't play. Like, I guess
Don't
to
play like he's
confuse
dead.
us,
Yeah.
but it's also like
You guys
it's
didn't
just
know.
weird,
Yeah.
right? It's just weird. Um, yeah, and then I think the plot points and conversations about how our governments are complicit in genocidal acts. Magneto really hitting it on the head of why do you allow you can't when Val was like we can't have a terrorist as a leader and he goes well a lot of your leaders are terrorists and
Hmm.
then boom what happens when we get into Bastion's little conversational headquarters room and all the people involved and what that really means.
Yeah.
To the end of it, where President Kelly is like, "Yeah, blow up asteroid M," but like they were not in danger of asteroid M falling at any point. They didn't know Bastion went up there either, right? They didn't
Yeah.
know Bastion went up there to destroy asteroid M.
They saw Magneto, asteroid
And,
M, and said, "Blow that motherfucker up."
right.
Yeah.
Instead of calling back something that you put money towards and like,
Yep.
oh look, we fucked up yet again, and then again clapping at the end because the
Because
X-Men
they were
saved your
saved.
life
Yeah.
through another situation you created. Like,
Yeah.
come the fuck on.
Yeah.
So like those storytelling elements are great and super impactful and very important to talk about. Um, like it's just the show is very good. Um, but it's important to talk about why it isn't and where it lacks
Hmm.
because we want it to be better for next season,
Hmm.
right? We want better for next season. We want better for these characters that mean so much to us, that we love so much and are so important, especially for people who are just being introduced to these characters through these stories, right?
Yeah.
We know the potential of storytelling with these characters, and it does fall flat in a lot of instances. Pacing aside, episode count aside, these are all choices that were made. Um, Hopefully with season 2 and 3, it's handled a bit better. That's all we can hope for.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun watching. I had a lot of fun watching with you. I had a lot
Same.
of fun interacting with everyone. Like I'm looking at my notes and I took a lot of notes, but at the end of the day, the one thing that I think is important is like the Roxxon sign and Madripoor. If you're into the MCU, you know Roxxon is a big company
Hmm.
that, so it's like those little things where they're sort of trying to weave it into what's happened in the MCU, or in the multiversal, because now they've tapped into the multiverse. Like, you know, is great. I also think it's important to realize that as someone, it is good to criticize and call out the problems of the show, but to also look at it as, like I've been saying, this is not the 616 universe. It is a sliding door universe where it's just slightly different than what we're used to in the comics.
Hmm.
So we also have to take this universe for what it is and how it presents the characters to us. I know people are still also arguing in the comments about Remy not being married to Belladonna. Fine, fair, you got me. They weren't married in the cartoon, but it's still like I talked about it on Twitter last week, where I kept still seeing discourse and mostly male commenters on calling Rogue a bitch and just the vitriol that she's been getting since episode 5.
Hmm.
Um, and I just want to tag it on here because I think it's very important to talk about, and then we can wrap it up. But I just have to say what I have to say. Um, that I don't understand how people can walk away from that episode and walk away with going, she is full of shit. I'm like, she was clear the entire time in the whole episode. She was clear and concise about her feelings, her intentions, and her thought process on her decision making on choosing Magneto.
Hmm.
What we also have to understand is that in the original series, there was no relationship with Magneto and Rogue.
Hmm.
They created that tension and relationship for this season. Is it my
Yeah.
favorite thing? No. Should we call it out? I do agree, because I don't think Rogue's story should be wrapped around involved men. It should be about her and figuring her shit out. But I guess
Mhm.
sometimes for people who like men, they're part of your story, so you have to figure out your shit with being involved with men, I guess. But like, she is a character who even they establish in the second episode at the
Mhm.
club, where she was just like, I want what they have. I want to touch. I want to
Mhm.
be intimate in that way with someone. I do love you, Remy, and I'm so happy you're here by my side, but this is the one thing you can't give me. And sometimes love isn't enough.
Mhm.
And she broke it down for him in their conversation of, when I knew him, we had a relationship. Still weird to me. We
Mhm.
had a relationship, and he showed me the potential of what the mutant future can be. Also, knowing who she was raised by, Mystique, who was also showing her the potential of what the mutant future could be,
Mhm.
a freedom for people like them. And to be given that opportunity with someone she already had a connection with and whatever, the ability to expand on that aspect of intimacy that she's been looking for, it's understandable why she would take that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in a relationship, love isn't enough. It just isn't. That's a real life
Yeah.
fact. Sometimes love isn't enough. Um, Not only that, she was just like, I want with how I was raised, with who she was shunned by her real father in a it's either in comic books or in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Found someone who took her in, and though Mystique was using her for dubious reasons,
Mm-hmm.
still took her in and loved her in her own way. Met someone who also appreciated and loved her despite her affliction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who showed her what the possibilities could be. To joining the X-Men and seeing what family could be.
Yeah.
To getting that love and that support within the X-Men. To then in life wanting to go, well, I want to pay that forward. Any way I can do that for other mutants who look like me or don't look like me, who are hated and shunned and left beat out in the gutter, I want to do more for them because you all showed me what more can be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking your example of what love, family, and support is, and I want to pay that forward so that no one has to go through what I went through. So none of us have to do this anymore. So we don't have to fight anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a place we can do that, and I want to do all I can. And she let that be, and that's so admirable for any character, whether Magneto chooses that path or Gambit chooses that, or she. That's what they all want, is a place where they no longer have to hide and run and be afraid for their lives.
Yeah.
So she straight up told him, like, look, I love you, but it's not enough. Gambit, I mean, I love you, it's not enough. And where our relationship is, though it's not concrete, though we know our feelings for each other, there is no actual title for us at the moment because we're still trying to figure shit out. Here's
Yeah.
an opportunity for me to get something I've always wanted and also do something I want to do.
Yeah.
Right? And Gambit was real mature, like, girl, I see, okay, this breaks my heart and I feel like shit, but I still want to be in your life. We'll be friends.
Mm-hmm.
To her then going to Magneto, showing up for her community, showing up for him, and she even calls Magneto out too. She 100% calls Magneto out in their conversation. Like, was this
Yeah.
all you want? Like, is this what you wanted from me all along? Like, what the fuck is your problem?
Yeah.
So there's that. But then getting that thing she always dreamed of, but then in that instant realizing, okay, love is enough. This isn't how I want my life to be. Like, obviously she's probably not thinking deeper on the level of I can do for my community, but
Mm-hmm.
for personal reasons, for me personally, this isn't the path I want to go on. And sometimes we need to do these things in life to be like, okay, yeah, I want to try this out. It's not working for me, so let me see what does. She
Yeah.
chose Gambit in the end. She chose, and now if the genocide wouldn't have happened, she was gonna go to him and be like, "Hey, Boo Thang, let's
Yeah.
talk," and they would have worked shit out, right?
Yeah.
But that didn't happen because a story needs to get told. So I'm just I'm still so confused why people are like, "She's such a bitch," and what the fuck, and I'm just like, but they laid it out for you clearly and concisely
Some people just
what
don't
her
want to see.
motivations were.
Some people just see red when they're listen. Obviously, as a Gambit and Rogue
Mhm.
Stan, right? I was just like, yo, my man's Gambit, like he's going through it because of this whole,
Right.
and I mean, a lot of it's just
And
for the lols,
right,
and right,
and
yeah,
that's fair. You can definitely relate to Gambit as like,
yeah,
"Oh shit, my boy. Oh man, boy."
yeah,
Like, I felt for him. Like, I don't want Rogue with Magneto. I don't want that shit.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, at this in the same breath, it's just like, once people saw that, oh, it's just, oh, now that Gambit was friend zoned, right? It's
mm,
those people who relate more to just being so called friend zone, and now it's the girl that they can't have. But now when the I guess you say the now it's like you don't know what you have until it's gone. I think
Right.
those people are leaning more into that with Rogue. But literally in the end, just before even that situation was pretty much, well, I guess you could say more so. It really compounded the fact that after he was gone, that's what people are really more so latching on to. And people will be like, well, you could have prevented this whole thing. You could have, no one could have prevented Genosha from happening. That was one thing.
Mm.
That we be
Cable
the reason
tried.
if
Cable
Cable
tried
tried.
200 times.
Yes.
Like,
So just so that people understand, you couldn't prevent Genosha from happening. And even if Rogue chose Gambit before the tragedy happened, it would have just been worse for her
mm,
mentally, right? Because and so these people just latch on to hate when it comes
right.
to this. More so because that's how they're relating with this series. Because they're like,
Mhm.
damn, what happened to Gambit? What happened to me too? And now that I'm gone, it's fuck Rogue all day. And I mean, like, listen to those dudes and some gals out there too. I'm like, more power to y'all because I mean, like, some people, I mean, y'all wake up and start hating it the minute you wake up and whatnot. That's a thing. Some people can get paid for that on Twitter,
Right.
so more power to y'all. But let's bring it back to reality. Some people like if there's one thing, it is some people don't know what they have until it's gone, right? That's the one thing they're holding on to, but I feel like they're just like clinging to hope that that's going to be the thing that that they can carry this argument on, and it's a straw man argument at the end of the day.
Mm.
Like grasp, literally, a lot of these people who have been clinging to that, just what is it? What's the saying that they always say? Missing the forest for the trees, right?
If you're
Miss
looking,
for the tree.
yeah, no, I know what I know what the
Yeah,
saying is. Something
yeah,
about trees in the forest and
trees.
missing
Yeah,
out on what you're actually looking at, right?
yeah, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. Like hiding in plain sight. Like it's literally there. It's literally hiding in plain sight. That at the end of the day, Rogue it was gonna choose Gambit. I mean, and I would like to believe those people as well, also readers, because I have seen those comments and one person mentioned something that from the comic books as well. So I'm like, bro, if you read the comic books, and I didn't read the comic books, right? But if you read the
Right.
comic books, then most likely you know that she chose Gambit, and so I don't know what fuck people talking about sometimes. Like I said,
Even
I didn't read that far, but that comment specifically, one that I wanted to call out, like that was on that train of calling Rogue, oh she's a bitch because he did all. I'm like,
yeah,
bro, you just said you read the comics, so obviously you didn't read enough, or you were in
you
you.
stopped at some
Yeah, yeah,
right.
like yeah, I don't know, you skim read or something. I don't know. Some people
Because
just yeah.
it's just like even their relationship is a Marvel mainstay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're married now in the Gambit and Rogue are married
Mm-hmm.
in the comics now. But even like let's say in Age of Apocalypse, she kind of marries Magneto under weird circumstances. She gets, I think she actually gets either Scarlet Witch's powers or Lorna's powers, and through that connection and whichever daughter died to like take care of my dad, well, she ended up taking care, and there's a connection there. But even in that storyline, there's still that whole will they, won't they with Gambit
Mm-hmm.
seeding in through it. And then even in the uh, during Legacy run, and she actually gets called Legacy, I believe in the there's like that whole thing, like it's in every universe, they're still super connected to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And even though the Rogue and Magneto relationship and Rogue and Joseph, who is Magneto's clone, is not my favorite aspect of Rogue's storyline, amongst many things, but sticking around, she always chooses Gambit in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's if you want to compare it to real life, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you fall in love with someone, you break up, you go off and live your life, and you eventually find your way back to each other,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of really super happened in a speed run episode 5, right?
Yeah.
They were in love, and he honestly, even though people were like he's so she knew how she knew how he felt, but also
Mm-hmm.
his conversation with Kurt is like he's obviously really doubting their situation anyway too. He's
Mm-hmm.
doubting either himself or I guess Kurt wants to call him humble in that or modest in that way, but he's all like, I'm a bad boy. There's no love for us. So if you're already having those feelings in this relationship, then it's probably good that both of you just take some time apart and learn how to be friends with each other. Because also
Yeah.
the whole time in the original series, he's like bothering her, and she's like, bro, I can kill you, and he's all like, well, I'm gonna bother you anyway. So also that's not great. But like, yeah, it's just one of those things that like for on a personal note, if I'm taking what I pulling out from the show personally from my
Mhm.
favorite character, it's that's been just like really gnawing in my craw, just like contextually, and it's right there in the story. So
Mhm.
for you to be like, I'm tired of her like after in episode 7, like she needs to stop yelling about Gambit. I'm just like, she just lost the love of her life and didn't get to tell him that she loved
Mhm.
him. I don't.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Anyway, I give the show a 7.5 out of 10 because there's room to grow. Animation. I just want to wrap this up because we've been
Mhm.
talking ad nauseum at this point about so many things and not even about this show, right? 7.5 at this point. I feel like there's room to grow. I think it's important to criticize the show for where it's lacked. It's important to really take in the people who have produced this show and write this show and all the stories that are coming out about it uh and what it's meant. We do also need to understand each other's feelings and perceptions of
Mhm.
this. The show isn't objectively bad, it's not objectively good. I think it's a very good re-establishment of X-Men and what it can mean for the Marvel universe as a whole going forward.
Mhm.
Um, Considering that they were definitely pushed to the back of the closet for a very long time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and if one thing I just, if one thing I want to see aside from obviously Rachel, um, the things I hope that continues how the situation with Rogue and them being in back in time with Apocalypse and how that's gonna affect when she comes back, her relationship with Gambit going forward and how that drama is gonna lay out.
Mhm.
Um, I want better for Storm. I want better for Jubilee. Um, but I think introducing other characters is quite fun too. I'm
Mhm.
excited to see that. Because you have a whole 5 seasons with these characters anyway, so
Yeah.
if you want more of that, go watch that, right?
Yeah.
And but you're still getting these stories with them too. Um, I think a reexamination of understanding Charles and Magneto's relationship is also important going forward. What him leaving the Shi'ar Empire, what any ramifications that might bring.
As people
Where's
said, the
Mystique?
bird people.
Right. Where's Mystique? Where's Mystique?
Oh
Where's
man.
where's my lady? Where's my murder wife? Where'd she go? Um, so like, yeah, I want this show to be better, and there's so many opportunities for this show to be better. I think this is a good. It laid the groundwork quite well. It got excitement up. It got the fever up. Hopefully, the only way to go is up, right? More
Mhm.
Easter eggs, more stuff I could talk about and shit out, right? And just throw up about these fucking people and these fucking characters and what they mean to me, and hopefully what they mean to you. And yeah, I think at the end of it, I'm just really appreciative that I got to share this with you, that I'm getting to have these conversations with you, that
Mhm.
I'm seeing X-Men through your eyes.
Yes.
Um, because to me that's important when it comes to media like this, understanding how other people perceive it and what it means to other people. Um, Both positive and negative unless you're being out of pocket.
Mhm.
Um, and all the conversations we're having in the comments and all you people joining us, that I can't thank X-Men 97 enough for this opportunity that it has given me to talk about something I love so much and to talk about it with you guys and have you guys along for the ride. So 7.5 out of 10. I can't wait for season 2.
Yep, yeah, because season 2 is gonna be I mean, it should be special. Once again, thinking it's gonna be 10 episodes.
Please bring
Um
back Madeline. Please.
the Goblin Queen. So you
And
can have
yeah,
another action figure with baby Nathan in it that goes viral on a Twitter post. That would be something. That would definitely be something. I mean, maybe Dazzler.
Yeah. Well, Dazzler in the cartoon looks different than what
Mm-hmm.
people are perceiving Dazzler to be now.
Mm-hmm.
In the cartoon, she's the short-haired brunette with
Mm-hmm.
a more of a punk look than she is the disco blonde-haired, strawberry blonde-haired goddess that people are talking about right now at the moment and thinking that regular white pop stars look like because they're both white. But you could see my thoughts on that on my Twitter. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
All right,
Synergy,
folks.
capitalism.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man. With that said, we'll catch you guys for the next video that we have on X-Men. Definitely stay tuned. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, you'll be seeing more X-Men content on the channel. And especially with the next X-Men series we're going to tackle. So if you made it to this 2 hour long video,
Jesus Christ, I'm so
X-Men,
sorry.
X-Men, X-Men Evolution is what we're gonna be tackling next. So that's our little spoiler alert. So with that said, we'll be catching you guys next time officially. So you already know. Doses.